We have to wait for the report. There we go. Now, all right, so we have a couple of people on Zoom. So just like for those of you who were here last time, please don't make your comment until you have the golden microphone. Because if you don't, then the people on Zoom don't hear it. And I know because I've been there before. Or if they go to the YouTube channel and look at the video, then they won't hear you. Okay, so we'll pass the microphone. But anyway, before we do our pledges and officially start the meeting, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. And there may be more people coming in because some of them have to come late. They just can't make it at 5:30. So we'll just welcome them in, point them to the handout, and we'll let them take a seat. Dr. Michelle Reinhardt was going to try to be here. You want to put the slide up? There are many great things happening behind the scenes, things that we can't talk about until they're official and all the legalities taken care of. One of those is we got to announce today that we're going to have childcare in Alpine this summer is when we're looking to open. And the point of that slide is just to say that we can do more things and greater things when we work together. So working together really makes a difference. So the groups were Big Bend Regional Medical Center. They put forth some money to this collaborative. The Rio Grande Council of Governments actually sent the grant to us, and we sent it over to Alpine Community Projects, which is a nonprofit, and they're doing a lot of great things. They have their eyes set on something else that's really big, and hopefully we'll be able to make an announcement about that in the next 6-8 months. Might take a while. So Alpine Community Projects, Alpine Business Alliance, the City of Alpine, and Alpine ISD. Did I miss anybody?
The hospital, you said the hospital.
Right. Yeah, I think that's everyone. So we were all working together since this past summer. And it came together, we got a grant. And now we're looking to have childcare in Alpine. 50 spots is what we're thinking will be. And that makes a tremendous difference.
Did the hospital district come on board? Or just no.
Okay, so the question was, did the hospital district come on board? JD Newsom was there representing Alpine Community Projects. So maybe kind of, sort of, because he's kind of a member of both. All right, so anyway, so I wanted to say that we have some tremendous players in the city, and we're making great strides, and it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. Not only that, but we now have hospice in Alpine, and that's incredible too. And she's taking care of one of the families, one of the professors' families here, and they have nothing but wonderful things to say about Angel's Care. So that's another tremendous difference. Okay, and this gentleman is from Alpine Community Projects too. He's one of the board members. So welcome, Keith Nixon. All right, so let's go ahead and stand for the pledges so we can officially kick off this meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, thank you. So this is an informal meeting. It's not a formal city council meeting. We don't have all the rules that have to be read and all that stuff. The only request is that when you want to make a comment, and I know it's hard to get it at first, microphone. You need the microphone so that we have it for the recordings, for the people on Zoom and for the people who watch the YouTube video. All right, so I did want to mention that at the last meeting, we took a look at all those sticky notes, 774 sticky notes were accumulated over our 6 town hall meetings. And from those, we have this beautiful pie chart. And the pie chart shows that what the majority of residents want to focus on is our utilities, which makes sense. I don't know if y'all saw, we had another water break last night. And so I put that on Facebook, but not everybody in the city's on Facebook. Only about half the people are on Facebook. And now tonight, what we want to do is try to narrow it down. We know we want to focus on utilities. What? Do we want to start with the wastewater treatment plant? Do we want the wastewater treatment plant and the sewage pipes? Do we want to go big? Do we just want the wastewater treatment plant? How do we want to do it? Or maybe we're more concerned about our mains and them breaking. So that's what we need to decide together. And I know that Mr. Nixon has something else that he also wants to address tonight. So we'll make sure you do that before you have to leave. You have to be out at 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan because she has a little bit of background information to give us to help us.
I've got the mic over here and I talk pretty loud. So after the last meeting, we got a lot of good feedback. And I'm really appreciative of everyone who made comments. We have everything typed up. We got emails from various residents throughout the city. So I kind of wanted to, next step, we do have to narrow it down. And after a lot of the feedback, maybe the real first step is what's the plan to have a plan. And when I say that, I'm looking at, we have to have an engineer study maybe, or maybe we need to have a construction study done. We have to have something in place before we can even borrow money. Not many of us will walk to a bank and say, hey, I'm gonna borrow 50,000. No, I don't have any plans for it. I just want $50,000. And speaking with our bond counsel and in speaking with other places, it's really, you have to have this plan to borrow the money because you don't want to borrow too much and you don't want to borrow too little. And you don't want to not have something to present when you're going out for these. And then you have to know what type of bond you're going out for. Maybe you're not going out for anything. You can actually do it all in-house. You just didn't realize it. So after the last meeting, the big prioritization came down from infrastructure. And we talked about all different aspects of infrastructure. I included gas on here, even though they weren't spoken about as much, only because it is a type of infrastructure. Our water, our wastewater, our streets, and our gas department are all infrastructure. And then the second big thing that was discussed was employees. So from infrastructure, we're just gonna go back and look based on the raw data and the feedback from the first prioritization meeting. There was a lot of questions. Ms. Rose brought up, our water quantity. What do we have? I know that Keith, who used to be our utility director, our wells, do we need more wells? What are your priorities? So understanding our water quantity, a rate study. So the city had initiated with US Communities.
Communities Unlimited.
I always feel messed up. Communities Unlimited to start working on a rate study. And we initiated this actually back in August when we were looking at trying to get the phases for our wastewater treatment plant. And they're looking at it from, if you're going to do that project, what do you need to change your sewer rate in order to cover a $4.6 million bond? What would you need to increase it based on your connections, residential, commercial? When we met with them at the end of the year, we were kind of like, okay, well, this is kind of good information to know, but we also want to know about water. And it's hard to figure out a rate study because there's a lot of pieces that go to it. You have to look at your operating expenses. You have to look at what you have in reserves. You have to look at, the current and the past history. We haven't had a true rate study since I've been with the city. Now we've looked at the actual rates and based on the areas in which we live in and comparable cities, and that's how we've changed it. But this is actually looking at the function of our department. It's hard when the department is in fire mode. They're not in maintenance mode. They're not maintaining, they're putting out fires. They're fixing the leaks and they're jumping from one part of town to the other. So we're taking that into consideration. Another feedback item was just information. Water information, inventory assets of the system, maintenance and operating costs. And this one really it's frustrating because in 2019, the city hired an engineering company to actually provide us with that asset, that inventory list. What do we have in the ground? What size is it? What type is it? How many connections do we have? And unfortunately, that contract did not end well and we have nothing. We did settle, but we got nothing in return. We don't have an inventory. We don't have an asset list. We don't have a plan. We have exactly what we provided them given back to us in files that we can't even open. So it's really disappointing that the city did try, but it never went through.
So Megan, that was $80,000, right?
Yes, so
Down the
we
drain.
settled for 80,000. So money that unfortunately we had to spend that really we shouldn't have had if they'd just done their job. And it may have been a communication. There was a lot going on between the city and that engineering company. But at the end, we suffered. It was money that was spent with nothing in return. And then the one big thing out of the whole meeting last one is how much debt can the city manage? On the wastewater treatment side, it was discussed the wastewater treatment plant. So, where everything goes. We're currently still trying to finish our installation of new aerators. We've had some contractual issues. The biggest one is getting the material. They are behind schedule, but we have a great engineering firm, and I want to give them credit because there was an issue with some electrical that was I don't want to say diagnosed, but the original plans had a one level of electricity and conduit. The actual aerator itself needed something else. Our engineering company is stepping up and covering that cost. It's not coming to us because they felt that it was a technical issue on their end and they're going to take care of us for it. And to me, that's exciting. And they're on top of the contractors to make sure we get that taken care of. The other item that was discussed is another part of our wastewater treatment plant is the clarifiers. These are huge containers that are below ground that fill up with the sludge, that the solids go down and the fluids come to the top and then they go out through the rest of the system. We have issues with them. We've had one that's been down for about a month. The second one started to go down. You have 2 employees working to try and get those fixed. And so last week I told them, you know what? Let's call a company. Let's get some help. It's a waste of time and money when you're already behind. Have someone assist. So we're managing that right now. And then the big one talked about was affluent water. So we do have an agreement with the golf course to provide them affluent water. We
Megan,
haven't been able to.
can you explain what that is?
So affluent water is non-potable water that is regulated by TCEQ that we can use for certain applications. It's not one that we're going to give you back to drink. It's one that can go on landscaping. We currently use it for our golf course. So Ross has been interested in it. They've approached us multiple times with, hey, how do we get involved? How can we get some of that? We can't even produce it right now, so kind of hard to. And the other project they're looking at trying to use it, which would require a little bit more TCEQ regulation, would be to revitalize the Coconut Ponds. When you go to the Coconut Park, you've got the lodge, and down below there used to be ponds. When I first moved here, there used to be actual water in there. It's revitalizing that and helping that become the bird habitat and a nice place for people to visit. So those were some of the big items. The council acknowledged and approved a feasibility study last year for the wastewater treatment plant. It has multiple phases for a total of $4.6 million. It is a high priority for me because that one comes with a lot of TCEQ mandates. It comes with, if you're not in compliance, we will go after you.
I also want to mention that was $4.6 million, what, last January?
Yes.
Last January. Think about inflation.
Megan, where's the documentation of when Avinash Vangra was pushing for the wastewater? And at that time, it was 4.6.
Are you talking about the East Side Interceptor project that wasn't passed through?
Yeah, we never made it happen. But he had done some studies or had some do studies to have that looked into and possibly put it in. And at that time, it was what, 2016 when he did that, 2017?
I want to say it was probably 2015, 16.
Okay. And at that time, it was 4.6.
And so that was the East Side Interceptor project that would have connected the east side of town, wrapped around the back of the mountain to the sewer plant to allow for that sewage to go a different direction. Instead of having to come back through the city, it would actually go back around. And there was issues with that. And it ultimately didn't get approved. And like you said, it was 4.6 at that point for a smaller project. This is rehabilitating the whole plant. So prices will go up and down. And of course, the big one on that was how much debt can the city manage? The last item under infrastructure that was really discussed was the streets. We all know that we have potholes and then need to rebuild. At the last council meeting, Eddie Molinar, our public works director, brought it to the council's attention, like, hey, can we just split the money? Let's start rebuilding and then start seal coating. Start moving a little bit money both directions. Prior council had discussed about trying to bring it back in-house. Buy the equipment, let's get them trained, let's provide them the money and have the paving in-house so we're not having to go out for RFQs or RFPs. We're not having to have someone come in as a third party, and we can hopefully get it done faster. Another question that was brought up was about, of course, how many streets do we have? What are city streets and what are not city streets? We've annexed certain parts of the city, so we have additional blocks. Those final numbers will be available at one of the council meetings. And then this one was brought up kind of sort of in the actual discussion, but it was further discussed, was mobility, a transportation plan. Kind of looking at our parks, bike routes, how do we get people moved around? There are grant opportunities for this. Actually, TxDOT took some time to come visit with us and they're like, hey, we've got preliminary step 1. Do you guys want to just throw your name in the hat here and see if you can get something? They've added a whole new section to their grant process for planning. Have a grant that actually pays for the whole plan for the whole entire city. There will be more discussion on this one, but it is something that kind of funny how it played out. We bring it up in a discussion and the next thing we know, TxDOT's like, hey, we got an opportunity maybe. So that was really exciting.
Is this the idea that Ms. Crumpton had about maybe having some kind of transportation too for Sul Ross students to get around town or get to the more distant parks and areas that aren't easily accessible?
This
by-
is non-vehicular. So this is your walking, this is your bicycles, kind of all your other modes of transportation. We had applied for it 2 years ago and Marcy did a great job. And I'm going to say this and she's giving me a look. We did it backwards.
No, we didn't.
We didn't have the plan. So we were trying to develop the plan as we applied for it. It's really hard when you're not an engineer. You're not exactly sure how the flow and how you want it to work. And you're trying to pull these pieces just to apply. And so we didn't get awarded that grant. But it was a great experience, a great learning experience. It was, yeah, we're not going to do it that way again. It's a lot of time and energy. I know Marcy probably put in 100+ hours. And if she had the ability to have the plan and then apply, it would have gone faster. And we may have had a better chance of getting it. We'll never know. The next item up was employees. And as we were discussing, and we've done it in city council meetings and just throughout the whole year, I mean, every entity is struggling with this. Employees are hand in hand with what we want, our priorities. You have to have the employees to be able to do the project, especially if we're going to try to do some of them in-house. You have to have the employees with the knowledge and the skills, the time to manage these projects. So some of the things that were brought up, and I thought this was great conversation with Dr. Reinhardt, skill training advantages, working with the school district in Sul Ross, having certification programs. If someone goes through this program with the school district, graduates the high school and they've got the certificate, why not give them that level up? We currently don't have a structure like that in place. Or if there's an opportunity for Sul Ross, and I know they're bringing it back and they're trying to work on having certain certification programs, where if we can go in and get them certified in some of these skills, hey, it's a promotion for them. It's a level up for them. And we're not having to spend as much to send them to College Station, to send them to San Antonio. We have it here. I thought Dr. Reinhardt was real passionate with, let's start at the high schools and move up. I mean, that's kind of, I think, been everyone's kind of in game for years. And now as we build all these partnerships back up, I can see this moving forward and really helping our community. Yes.
I just wanted to add, so I'm here in a few different capacities. So I'm up at the Sul Ross Industrial Technology Building. I teach up there. We have some programs coming down the pipeline for that specific training. And we're really trying there, hopefully to develop some sort of a full range program where we can get people in for certain certifications And then they could work all the way up into the master's program that we have currently concurrent with the MBA. So we'll have 6-month certifications, 2-year, we'll have our associate's degrees, we'll have our 4-year degrees, and then we'll have our MBA kind of working up into that.
And I love it. And that is exactly, why I love having it on here. Because this is the first time since I've been here that I feel like we're all kind of communicating and providing that, hey, we actually do have a program. You just didn't know about it. We have a lot of employees that would fit perfect in probably half your programs, that we could get them trained and they could be employed and move up and increase their pay. And it's fabulous. I love it.
And it's important for us to restore the partnerships with the community and with the local high schools and regional high schools to make sure that the people in our area that are used to being here, that understand how this area works, can get trained properly to, better service our infrastructure in the future. And we're not just kind of winging it as we go along, but, as something comes along, they've maybe seen it in the field or they've read about it, and none of this stuff is new, and they have the proper certifications to work on it. Like irrigation, for instance, we could have somebody that's actually trained at, with an irrigation license that's not necessarily a master plumber, but that understands that license.
I think that's wonderful. I really do. Thank you, Keith. Childcare, as the mayor pointed out, that was a concern that was discussed and brought up. We have a first step solution. Excited about that. Hopefully we can build on that and grow it. Another item that was brought up, not discussed in full detail, affordable housing. It's always been on everyone's mind. Getting people to move here and stay here, they have to have a place to live. And so that's something that has been brought up in our meeting. The other one was pay rates and benefits and understanding, and I focus on the city, and we do want to be competitive, and we do want to look at other cities our size. But we also have to remember we're competing with the county. We're competing with Sul Ross. We're competing with the school district. So it's working together so that we all can have, employees, and we're all managing that well. Our benefits. I have brought this up before council. Anyone who kind of sits down and talks to me about it, I think we do need to up our game on benefits. I think we provide wonderful benefits currently, but we don't provide anything after you retire. Once you leave the city and you put in your 41 plus years, it's kind of like, thank you, here's your plaque. And it's hard because you have employees who are dedicated to the city and have been here. And in order for them to retire, they're waiting until they qualify for that Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security benefits. And it's hard because you don't want them to be here and not want to be here. They're just buying their time. And I don't want that. I don't want any business to have to deal with that. So looking at that as well. And of course, retention. I mean, that's hard. We don't want our employees to leave, but I don't want to force them or encourage them to stay if they're going to be able to better themselves and their families. I think everyone wants their coworkers, their families, their friends, if, hey, if you can get a better job, then go for it. I mean, you want to improve. The biggest discussion and the primary concern through the whole last meeting, of course, was the financial status of the city. So one of the things that I'm currently working on, of course, is the 5-year in projections for revenues, expenses, and I added capital improvement plan because that's important. We are, unfortunately, don't have the capacity to run reports. Everything is manually done. So it's creating a spreadsheet to put in extra what ifs. I know inflation was talked about and how do you adjust and calculate and to look at it over several years. I can't just print your report and send it to you. It's having to look at our past. What was our revenue and expenses? How do we fluctuate? A lot goes to revenues. It's not just, a few random items. You have to think about our current status, our current council, predicting how they'll move forward. Are we going to raise taxes? Are we not going to raise taxes? You have to look at, and I know tourism is a big factor for the city, but tourism also affects our sales tax, which is our second biggest income for the general fund. You're looking at a projection of how's that going to, work. We had the anomaly with 2020, and sales tax, did take a little bit of a dive, but not significantly where we panicked. Some cities panicked. Some cities lost millions. We were very fortunate that we didn't. Our expenses, As mentioned with the utilities, you know, we're predicting the fires. We know that we have issues with our infrastructure and we want to have that money in there. And it's not just buying equipment all the time. It really is the inventory. It's having the pipes, the clamps, the fittings, having the staff to be able to fix and repair these issues. And it's not just water, it's wastewater as well. So it's looking at that as well, considering, do we move forward with the 5-year predicting that we're gonna, you know, continue with the same issues and not make any improvements? Or do we look at the 5 years moving forward with, you know what, let's go out for that, you know, debt or bond or however you want to word it and get the wastewater plant fixed. So we're not having those huge expenses coming down. It's kind of like a one and done. The capital improvement plan has changed over the years. We're trying to provide more information and more details into it, trying to look at, and it's hard because not one person is going to be able to tell you what does it cost to operate this. The city's historically never kept those types of reports and projects. So when I look at, well, what does it cost to operate a maintainer? Well, in 2019, it cost us $47,000 because we had to replace a whole electrical system. So those are just, I'm just throwing numbers out there, guys. But then maybe when we bought it in 2000, we didn't do anything. So it's really understanding what each piece of equipment is costing us, looking at the age of it, looking at the depreciation of it, looking at, you know, what does it cost to replace it? Or do we keep maintaining it? We've maintained everything for a long period of time that it's all coming to an end. We're having to sit down and buy the new backhoe, buy the new dump truck. We can't keep maintaining it. Reserves, everyone wants to know, and I think that's great. I love when people ask, what is our current status? And our debt, what is our current status? And I've done a couple things that I really thought were important for the public to understand. We have a debt policy. Council actually approved a debt policy, and that was a really important step because that regulates what we can go out for debt, how long the debt can be issued for. So when people ask, well, how much debt can we manage? The city can manage a lot. And when I say a lot, currently the state of Texas passed a law that requires us to not go over an interest and sinking rate of 1.5. That is $1.50. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Our current debt rate is 0.034. So we're not even 4 cents compared to $1.50. So we got a lot of room. We can take out a lot of debt. We don't want to. We don't want to. That's not the game plan. But a policy was put in place to regulate what we can and can't do with the debt. And it provided a little bit of explanation. And then Chris, I'm sorry to call you out here, but you'd even ask, do we have to go out to vote? How do you get the voters involved? How do you get the residents? And how do you get the information when we were talking about this policy? And this is why we did the policies, because there are guidelines. Not only did the state put in guidelines, but the city put in guidelines. Can't just go to the bank and take 50,000 out. There's a whole process to it. It can take anywhere from 45 days to 18 months. Certain levels of bonds, certificates of general obligation, they have to go for voter approval. And so those are done during November. So there are a lot of stipulations. We can't just go out for debt. We're not going to go out for debt anytime in the next year. But if we do and we need to, we have a plan and then we apply it. Of course, the different options and the requirements, how much can we manage and how much can we afford? So I wanted to bring a little information in light, and I mentioned this to the mayor before. In reserves, and please understand, this is not a rainy day fund. Rainy day funds are set aside for you to use it for just that, a rainy day, an emergency that pops up, just, let's move some money so we can cover something extra. These are actually allocated and dedicated to specific things. Yes, at any time, council can go in and change them up. They can move money from one to another as they see fit. When we first started to establish this, we had Techstar. When I first started, we had Techstar. When I started, Techstar had $571 in it. That's how much the city had in reserves altogether. 2013, $571. We now, as of today, December 31st, have $2,009,736.60 in Techstar. That is a huge difference in 10 years. Now, it's not all open money. Part of it is dedicated to the wastewater treatment plant. Because we cannot have so much money in our bank accounts, we have had to move money into Techstar because we had too much in our bank, which is great. Part of that money is from the American Rescue Plan Act that was provided to the city that does have stipulations on what we can use it for. Council currently has approved $741,127.78 specifically to the wastewater treatment plant. That money is going to be used this year for the aerator project. We budgeted $500,000 for that project, didn't touch it. Didn't have to touch it. We got this money, dedicated it. When we start getting those big invoices in, it's there. Because of our collateral limits, having too much money in the bank account, we are required by state and federal law to have it covered. We moved out $500,000 from our general fund checking account so that one, we stayed in compliance with state and federal laws, and two, put it aside. That money is currently general fund money that is not tied to anything. The second big transfer was the second half of the American Rescue Plan, which currently hasn't been dedicated to any current project, possibly the wastewater treatment plant, in the amount of $742,592.47. So we built this fund up. We don't have much wiggle room to it because the American Rescue Plan funds are very specific in what we can use them for, infrastructure being the big one. The other accounts are with what we call Texas costs. We have capital improvements. That is our street department. Its current balance as of December 31st was $285,684.50. That is currently tied to our current budget to continue road improvements. Our airport reserve is current balance as of December 31st was $28,755.65. That one is also tied to our current budget. If we get the next step in the airport layout plan, a TxDOT aviation supported grant, we will have to provide our percentage. This would cover that percentage. The estimate of the percentage that we would owe based on 100,000 plan is $25,000. So that money is there. We're not fumbling trying to pull it from other places. In the past, the gas department and the general fund combined have contributed $330,000 to the airport to move forward with those big projects from TxDOT. Projects we desperately needed. We had the available funding at the time, but we can't continue to do that. The hot reserve, which is our hotel occupancy tax, this one is dedicated. This one has those extra stipulations when it comes to the state. We can only use hot funds for specific items. Currently has $87,474.08. The Creek project. When I first came interim, I went back and looked at the Energy Transfer Partner Funds, kind of try to get a better idea. It was kind of being talked about, some of the council members. What was the money for? Was it required?
I just wanted to clarify, that's the pipeline money, right?
Yes.
That's what the residents call it. Where's the pipeline money? So that's what it's called. Can you
Yes.
repeat that one more time?
It's the Energy Transfer Partner, the pipeline money. The city did not get millions. I've heard that one. We did not get millions. Based off of conversations with their representative, I was told that we could allocate it to what we wanted. It was I don't like to use it like a peace officer. You're just like, hey, we want to help your community. What do you want to use it for? Currently, this one is divided. There's currently $50,000 specifically set aside for a splash pad. And the remaining, with council approval, was dedicated to the purchase of generators. We are currently in a grant process with FEMA, correct?
Yes.
There's so many different groups, for generators to support our wells in the well field. We were one of very lucky cities that did not go on a very long boil notice, because when we had that winter storm in 2021, I shouldn't say that. We were lucky to get generators out of Pecos. Yes, we rented them, but we were the last ones to get them. So we didn't go on a boil notice. The water was constantly moving the whole time. It was never disconnected from anyone. No one just had electricity. Those on private wells didn't have access because they didn't have electricity in some cases. But the remaining of that is specifically set aside to cover the city's matching. The last time I looked, we were at 164 for matching. Off the top of your head, about 164,000. We have about 102,000 or 182,000 currently set aside. So we're in a good place, especially if we do get this grant. I'm not coming before council or the public and saying, hey, we need to move money and we're gonna have to, take it from so-and-so, and no, we're prepared. The next item that was part of the pipeline money was our fire department. So the part of that donation was allocated specifically to the fire department to help with equipment needs in the amount of $199,955.43 at the end of December. The big one, the one that I like to look at and grow, and we've been lucky because some of the expenses that were dedicated and allocated, we actually ended up spending out of our operating. So we didn't touch the reserves. We utilized the operating because they were under budget, and that benefited the water and wastewater facilities. Currently, the only part of that money that is allocated to a specific project, which was under the Holiday Inn lift station, we had a reserve account set up for one of our bonds last year. We call it the RV03 reserve. Well, last year, the city paid it off, which means we have that money. And I get on and say, what can we use this for? What can we do? I'm getting 100 grand here. I'm gonna give a raise. And I had to be very careful. I didn't want to allocate it incorrectly or put it where it shouldn't have been. And the first thing that the bond council came back with is put it right back to your utilities. Set it aside for a project. So I went before council and they approved the $117,742.11, which was what was in that account, to go specifically to the Holiday Inn lift station. If you're not aware, we have had issues with the Holiday Inn lift station. It is called the Holiday Inn lift station because it's right beside the Holiday Inn. They actually paid to have it put in. So when they built the hotel, they wouldn't have sewer issues. It helps it's a gravity fed system. So it basically goes into this lift station, which we call Holiday Inn, and then it gets pumped, kind of forced through to the rest of the system. We've had problems with it. It's unfortunate. People like to flush clothes and laundry and towels and whatever they can down the system. And for about 2 years straight, the Holiday Inn hotel was constantly having backups. Can't really keep guests if it's coming up in your bathtub. It's a lot of money to replace those pumps. It costs the city anywhere from $14,000 to $25,000 a shot. We did it 4 times within 1 year. That's a lot of money. We've now had an engineering study done to give us options. What can we do to improve this? Is it a pump? Do we have the wrong pump? What do we need to do? They came back with you don't really need the lift station. You can redesign, not very much money, and fix the whole thing. So that's one of the projects on the long list of projects for the utility department that we're working on. And then the last one is our Pueblo Nuevo Park. City Council approved the grant with the Texas Parks and Wildlife. It's a 50-50 grant. At the time, the city had $0 set aside for it. So we got approved, but how are we going to pay for it? There was no money set aside. So last year was the first year we actually budgeted out of our operating money to move into a reserve to cover this grant. This year, we'll put another $75,000 out of our operating to cover this grant. So currently, based off of $200,000 that we need as our portion, we have $75,747.52. That's not a lot when you're looking at $200,000. We're very fortunate that the grant didn't get approved until October. That's when I signed the final paperwork. So we had already started putting money aside. So that was important to do. So total, out of all of our reserves, we have $3,833,631.60. From when I started, $571 to today. That's a huge difference. But then you want to know, okay, we have the money, but what about our debt? In 2013, we did have an incident with one of our debts. We're very fortunate to have some interest-free money from the Texas Water Development Board. Some of you know what that is. It is a state organized agency that kind of says, hey, come to us, we'll give you money, we'll help you out. We'll give it to you principal only or interest-free, grant and loan, we'll help you get assistance, we'll help you get projects done. It's a really great source, especially for smaller cities. In 2013, before I started with the city, there was a lot of kind of conversations going back and forth with the Texas Water Development Board. And of course, in my mind, it's like, what did we do? When we go out for certain types of debt, there are concessions. And the city was making the payments. They just weren't following all the concessions. One of the concessions being is your revenue. So basically what we have to do is it's like a 3-to-1 ratio, or 3-to-1, 1.5. We have to have more revenue coming in to ensure we can pay out that debt. So it's a revenue debt. So we're paying this money back based on what we collect. Well, if the city doesn't maintain their rate structure to ensure that they're bringing enough money, then we're gonna miss out on that concession, and Texas Water Development Board kind of gets upset. So they had been talking to the mayor at that time, and Eric Zimmer was involved, and we were kind of all trying to figure out, okay, how do we fix this? What do we do? Let's get back on track. We weren't behind on payments. Those were all being taken care of. We just weren't following all of the requirements of borrowing the money. We got back on track. We've been back on track. They look at our audits. I think that was a red flag in 13 as well. When the audit came back on the city, for those of you who don't know, it did not come back clean. It was not a good audit. There was a lot of unfortunate events that happened. These are all red flags to people who are lending you money. They don't want to continue to lend you money if all of a sudden you can't pass an audit, you have a federal investigation, and there's just so many issues going on. We are now back on track. They are ready to give us money. So the only bonds we have left is the 2005 one. The total amount of that bond was $4,131,000 in 2005, the year that we went for it. That bond specifically helped redo the South Side water system. That was one I have mentioned before that we have in the past fixed things. Currently, as of September 30th, 2022, we haven't made any payments this year yet. They're not due till March. We have 1.9 million remaining. That is 100% covered by the Water and Sewer Department. The second one is the 2011 refunding bond. Bonds have callable dates. So after, say, 10 years, you can go in and you can refinance your bonds. Maybe you get a better interest rate. Maybe you're going to combine a bunch of them and make one big one. So you're not making all these little payments. In 2011, the city went out and refunded. They called their bonds from the 90s and the early 2000s. The reason why I mention this is because historically the city borrowed money every 3 to 5 years. So there was a constant rolling debt. We have not borrowed money since then, since 2012 to be exact. That bond combined all together was $3,776,988. Currently, we have, and I divided it principal and interest, $315,000 in principal, $11,314 in interest. This bond will be paid off next year. So this is a good thing. This one is a split. Part of this comes out of property taxes, your debt, INS, and then the rest comes out of water and sewer. Water and sewer covers 40%, the general fund covers 60%. The next one, the three that we currently still have is the 2011 series. This bond was 1.8 million. This was the one that was a lot of discussion at the very beginning of when I was employed with the city. What happened to the money? Where did the money go? What projects were completed? There was a lot of groundwork that was put in to kind of figure out where did the money go. You still hear today about the train and having the quiet zone. Money listed in this grant or this bond was specifically supposed to go to that, and it didn't go. The money was not misappropriated. It wasn't stolen. Nothing happened. It just wasn't applied to the bond or the bond 12 items. It was put into operating to cover everyday expenses. Currently, there is 685,000 in principal, 137,475 in interest. This is split between the water and the general fund as well. 44% coming from water and sewer, 56% coming from the general. And the last one that's still on this list, because this is what we typically will post to our website by the end of February, is our 2012. This was a grant loan with the Water Development Board. This one was paid off at the end of 2022. So we no longer have that one. So I like to break it all down and then tell you, remember, I told you we had 3.8 million in reserves. Total debt is $3,071,789.75. So we have less debt. When this was initially put together, if you look at the total debt for all of our grants with these just remaining, it was $9,862,092. This doesn't include all the ones the city has paid off over the years. Every year when we pay one off, it comes off the list. So our debt has significantly started to decrease. And the reason why we can say that confidently is we haven't borrowed any money. We haven't gone back out. So we're not putting huge chunks aside to pay off the debt. We're just not adding to the debt. We're making sure what we had in the past is being paid for. We've got it covered. We're meeting all of the concessions. We're not violating any of the regulations, and we're paying it all off. So it's really important when you look at, well, how much can we borrow? Well, when you have a current INS rate of say 4 cents, and you can borrow up to $1.50, that's a lot of debt. I would never recommend going out and let's borrow up to $1.50. You really need to know, what are we going to borrow for? You have to understand, is there something that we really want to go for? And then what does it fall under? We don't want to go out for debt for our utilities with our property tax. That's not really how the system works. You want to go out for debt and you want to go out with utilities, what we're charging residents. But you don't want to just compare cities. You want to know, what is it going to cost to continue where we're at and add this debt over the next 5 years, 10 years. Our policy says that we will not go out for debt longer than 25 years. Some of these debts, 30 years. That's longer than what we would have, if we'd had a policy in place, we'd be closer to being done. Now the state is starting to crack down on what we can have for debt. They don't want us to go willy, to get all this money. They want to regulate it, but we don't want to give up our ability to go out for debt either. If we were Tyler, Texas, and we had Samsung coming in with this huge plant that don't borrow money, we got a gold mine coming in. Or if we had these huge manufacturing companies coming in, it would be significantly different. And currently we don't. I don't think a resident or council member now or future is going to agree to have some huge power plant put in, some huge manufacturing company within our little community. One, they wouldn't be able to get employees to do it. So I thought it was really important to kind of show you. So currently, when we look at debt, the water department, so our sewer and sanitation really no longer have any debt tied to it because we paid the last one off. Water alone has $2,415,414.90. This is their debt to bear. This is us budgeting every year until 2036 to pay this back. Do we want to go out and take a big chunk out on them? No, we really don't. But we can't continue if our infrastructure is falling apart. The general fund, and the reason why I really want to emphasize this one, because if I could, I would take that 500,000 we moved out of reserves, and I would put it to the $656,374.85. That is all INS has left. That's our property tax debt. I'd love to pay it off, but they don't like that. Unless it becomes a callable bond, they won't let us make a payment. That you pay on schedule, you don't pay late, you don't pay early. They do not like it when you pay early because they will refund 3 cents. So we want to make sure when we look at our street department, we have the wiggle room to go out for debt to improve our infrastructure for streets. It is there. Doesn't mean we're going to go do it this year. It means that, hey, we want to do a real study, because one of the big complaints I've heard from all of these meetings is curbs. How are we going to manage the water flow? We don't want to rip up a street and this water and gas department not be prepared to redo the infrastructure, Because we have streets, we invested 2 million over 3 years that have already been torn up, completely rebuilt. And we've come in and we've cut them because there's been a water leak. There's new services being installed. And it makes me cry because like, I know, I saw the money, I cut the checks, 2 million, and within 3 years, we've cut them. And we know that when you cut the road, it doesn't have the same as when it was first done. So there's, excuse me. Those are some of the big things that we're looking at, some of the big items that you guys have brought up. Go ahead.
I was going to say on the water, one thing that we can do individually, and maybe there's some incentives with the city. There's a bigger push, especially in communities that don't have fantastic stormwater management, is to manage the water that falls on your lot and manage the water that falls on your land. And so it's about tiers, it's about sloping, it's about water catchment, it's about the proper plantings and the proper soils. So we as individuals can help do that. And there's some great master naturalists here that could be a resource. And we can help coordinate that, and we could help, do some sort of a program locally that would really minimize some of that water runoff. So we're not being such a burden on our streets and catching more of the water that falls on our lots. Because traditionally, so I'm a builder, home builder, and traditionally we had always been taught, build up, slope away, let the stormwater manage that. And we are reverting from that now into how can we not just pass along problems, but how can we be part of that solution?
I love it because I know Karen Cantrell has also brought up in the past about the city also installing like rain catchment systems, especially like in our parks, and to be able to harvest that water. You're right, as far as incentives. I'm originally from El Paso. I don't know how many of you have been through and see all those rock yards. We all went to rocks because there was an incentive to it. You got a discount. So I think that's definitely something we look into, because maybe you're right. You have someone come in who can establish and show, hey, I've made these improvements. It's going to help not only myself, but the city. And let we work something out. I think that's a wonderful idea.
I don't know if it's possible here, but in Nevada, they give you $1 a foot off of your property tax if you xeriscape your yard. And xeriscape should become big, and it's not that difficult to do. And I would like to see a community project started by xeriscaping the front lawn of City Hall.
Well, I walk all the time over it, so I'm working on it.
But anyway, those things are just going to be important in the future because we are in the desert.
Yes.
And we all need to realize we're in the desert and water is finite. I don't care how much we got a lot of water, but it is finite. And that's one of our valuable resources.
Spell xeriscaping for me, Karen.
You got it. I was gonna say, and
All right.
Yeah.
we got it. It's okay, Marcy. And I was just gonna say that xeriscaping is so easy. You don't have to get out there and mow your lawn all the time. Yeah.
There is one thing I want to mention before we, and I want to have a great discussion, and then I'll step back. And I'm hoping I'm not jinxing myself, and I'm preparing Marcy for the shocker here. The mayor and I had a meeting today. I became aware of some information that apparently has been in place for a while, but not having the right connections and kind of like process of things was kind of like, what? So we had a meeting today with Congressman Tony Gonzalez. He does a kind of like a monthly, quarterly, he's always throwing out this information. His assistant for this area, Jessica Marquez, came in and visited with us. Dr. Reinhardt was there as well. And she's all like, yeah, we do these community awards, and anyone can apply, and we help out the communities. And of course I'm here, what? And Dr. Reinhardt's kind of like, what? So we were listening to her talk, and we're like, well, what can we do? What can we do? And I'm thinking, like, oh, maybe they give us 100,000. Every little bit counts.
No, you said 50.
Okay, I know.
Yeah, and I was like, well, let's go big or go home.
I'm not thinking on the scale of a congressman. So she started reading off some of the ones that were awarded last year. And she says, I can't remember. the name.
somebody 4 million.
21 million, and I'm telling you, I almost cried. I almost cried today because we made it very clear that in a very short opportunity of 2 weeks in March,
Yeah,
we are
it's
gonna go
fast.
out for 4.6 million for the wastewater treatment plant. We're gonna go for it all.
And it may work. It may. I was the first mayor to jump in there and to tell him what we needed. And then I said, and we have pictures. And he said, I've seen them. I
So
said,
let
we
me-
have water leaks. And he said, that's not a water leak. That's a, and he didn't finish, but yeah.
So part of the strategic plan and why it's important for y'all to know this isn't all about having to spend money and to go out for debt. If we have a plan in place, that plan, we have a feasibility study stamped by an engineer with phases laid out, 1, 2, rotate, mix them for a complete shovel-ready grant that can be fully funded. If you had asked me for this a year ago, 2 years ago, I probably would have been like, well, we're not prepared. We're not ready. We don't have anything to present. We literally have 2 weeks to apply. We have. an
In
engineer
March,
report.
in March.
We're gonna request letters of support, Mr. Hinton. Because this affects our whole community. This isn't just about the city. This is our whole community. Mayor Eves was the first one on that conference call today saying, hey, oh, hey, good afternoon, and we have a problem. This is our, like, I want to say it's one of those too good to be true, but we pray it happens. Because if this is covered, we're not going out for debt. We're not raising taxes. We're literally handing over, saying, help us. And if they do, we move forward. We don't slow down. I'm not going before council, but to tell you, phase 1's complete. Phase 2 is complete. Phase 3, we have a whole new TCEQ doesn't even come out here anymore because we're so good. That will never happen. But they're here so often. So we're
And-
really excited that, you know, through networking and through having communications with partners, Dr. Reinhardt, you know, Greg Hennington, President Carlos Hernandez, all of them have stepped up and we're working together for our whole community. And I think it's really important that as we go through this, that's an item that may never make it to the end because we'll learn in what, June, July? That, hey, we have it or we don't. And if
Yeah.
we do, even better.
Yeah.
If we don't, we know we tried and we're prepared for the next opportunity.
And also his representative said it'd be good to have letters of support from community members talking about how the boil water notices and the leaks and the sewage backups affect you too. So the more letters of support, the better.
That might be something, maybe some.
The golden mic.
Maybe some sample letters to help people with what kind of form, what are we looking
So
for?
we've already started. During the meeting, I'm emailing her like, here's my draft.
Because there's a lot of people who do that, but like just saying, oh, I'm supposed to write what?
So, and we're gonna make this very public. Like I said, we have a very short window. But I want to be ready. I want those letters in our office tomorrow. I want to make sure, go through our feasibility study, make sure, okay, everything's signed, documented. Attach the council minutes where they approved and recognized. My big question back to them is, do you want to see all of our TCEQ violations? Do you want to see where we've been struggling and we're trying to fix it, but we can't? Having this huge binder, so when he sits down and looks at it, he's like, whoa, they do need help. I don't know of a
And
community
pictures.
within this area that probably has ever been awarded something like that from him. Because a lot of them, he flat out said, Mayor of San Antonio comes to my office first day and says, give me 400 million. Doesn't come to the Zoom calls apparently, so you know, I'll take 4.6 of it. But having it ready and being able to just hand it over. This is 4.6, and it may cost us a little more, but we have some money set aside.
Maybe we should ask for
HR.
5.
But we'll be prepared. And so it's exciting because that's something we're not gonna worry about when it comes to looking at this plan. This is a living document. This isn't set in stone and we can't do anything else because our priorities change, our infrastructure's changed. And you know, we are very lucky we have a grant writer that may one day be bored at 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, oh, this is an interesting grant. I know I do it, so I hope she does it. But you find something, you're like, oh, they'll pay for all of it. And we have the plan to give to them and say, here, take it. run with it. Give us the money and help us. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as we think about the infrastructure, we think about the water treatment plant, we think about the wastewater. Maybe the right word is not growth, but if we are going to thrive and we are going to attract talented people and we're going to attract skilled workers, I know housing is a huge problem. And the housing is, there's a diversification of housing problem. We need some affordable housing. We need some, the term has newly been coined, middle housing. So not necessarily affordable, not necessarily custom or semi-custom, but how do you get that nurse? How do you get that professor? How do you get that teacher that's used to maybe a suburb in the city where we have a very low inventory of housing available and a very badly aging inventory of housing available. So, you know, anecdotally, and I think everybody's heard this, I don't know that anybody's pulled together the data, but there's been a lot of stories of the teacher that is here and loves it. It's been fantastic, but their kid can't get into childcare. And the house that they're in, as soon as they're in, they're ready to find something else. They're ready to move out in 3 months and they just can't be here. Or the doctor came and looked at the available units and they just couldn't see themselves in any of them. So when we think about the infrastructure, maybe not so much just replacing, but also some expansion and some thought about, you know, future use.
Perhaps a development plan or development. Different word for plan.
Yeah.
I think expansion development. I love the word thrive.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great like goal. How is the city gonna thrive? And it's gonna thrive because we're gonna make those improvements.
Yeah, and
You're
that goes along with what you're talking about the initial investment versus the constant maintenance. And so if we can make those assessments, I know we have you know, a newer city inspector, and we have some dated infrastructure maps. We have hard copy maps on the walls of our building official office that are either hand drawn, or luckily some of the people are still alive that remember where the water lines are. Or we hit some things when we're building or other people are building that nobody knew was there. Some things have been abandoned. I know the working on those procedures is always an ongoing process, but if we kind of start early on assessment of what we have, assessment on where we'd like to go and how we can bridge those gaps, I think is kind of the priority, because we are really just patchworking infrastructure, housing, hopefully not childcare anymore with this great stuff coming down the line. But the main things that I hear is childcare and housing is just really hurting us. And then hopefully when we solve maybe not solve, but hopefully when we help to close that gap on our childcare problem and our housing problem, and then we can start working on our senior care problem after that. And I know Kirsten Moody is on the Zoom call. And so I'm a part of another group called Alpine Community Projects. And we were newly formed this last year, and we are hoping to just kind of bridge that gap between what we think Alpine needs and what we think Alpine wants, and be that conduit for what the community is asking for, what the city's trying to do, what the community's trying to do, and just be that support system. Oh, hey, have you talked to these people? Or there's a grant for this, or we're just kind of operating as a conduit for the community, a think tank for the community, an encourager, a supporter of the community. So that's an additional resource that hopefully we can be for the community to help solve some of these problems as we're doing this phenomenal exercise and trying to assess what it is. Maybe if the city can't solve that directly, maybe we could jump in and solve it as a community, as a group.
I love it. And I'm glad that you were a few minutes late, because one of the things we did talk about was that asset list and how the city did try. And unfortunately, it didn't prosper to anything. For me, that's really going to be the step one, is we have to have the knowledge in what do we have, what is in our ground. And you're absolutely right. There is very few people who are still alive that know anything that goes on in the ground, whether it be water, whether it be wastewater, whether it be gas. And you're absolutely correct. There's sometimes, even though a water department will go in to cut up a road or make a repair, and they're like, when did that go in? Because you open the ground and you sometimes don't know what you're gonna find. Or everyone went in at the same time. Well, you have the ground open, so we're gonna put electric, gas, water, and sewer all right there. Makes it really hard to repair. But you're absolutely right. We need an asset list and understand what we have.
Keith was talking about several issues that are already identified by the community that when you ask somebody, this is an obvious problem that Alpine has. And one thing, while the judge is here, I wanted to kind of raise an issue that's not actually a visible problem. And it's that the Alpine Public Library actually performs exceedingly well with very little in the way of resources. And so I just wanted to kind of raise the issue that certainly most of the places in this country, a library is a government provided service. So it's identified as a well, maybe not a critical, but a really important community service. And we have the luxury in some ways to both our county and our city that we have an independent nonprofit that raises money, provides, makes up the difference that tax funds don't. What we're looking at right now, though, is a pretty unsustainable yearly need. So we have 40,000 from the city and 42 from the county every year. That's been flat for about 20 years or so. That's from way before we opened the new building. Now it's gone down and gone back up. The county has shifted a little. The city's been very steady. And I want to absolutely say that the library is incredibly grateful for that support, no question. But when I came back onto the board in the last year, and I'm observing the volunteer base that's getting more threadbare. We're really looking this year at trying to broaden that, invite new people to participate and things like that. But what we're really looking at is asking retirees and people with time to raise the funds so that our library keeps going, so that we actually hit the payroll for the staff. And we're not able to give them what we would consider the kind of raises that they deserve or that could be competitive. So the people that are working at the library right now are doing it because they love libraries. It's a fun place to work. They like working with the community. The director is good and pleasant to work with. They don't get paid very much. They don't get benefits because these volunteers can't raise enough to pay it. And so what we're looking for is a sustainable path for those library employees and the library services. So where the volunteers can be, this would be my dream. The volunteers can be doing a value add rather than spinning that hamster wheel just to keep the lights on. So I would ask you guys to maybe look at that in the next few years.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Keith was saying about everyone coming together and making things happen. Dr. McDonald, Dr. Ray, Dr. Case, and myself put a board together so we could get a nursing home put in. They donated 17.6 acres. And we could never even get a support letter from the county, from the city, from the school. We tried fundraisers, we tried to get people to bid and put stuff in. We could never make it happen. We had to return the property that was given to us because we were never able. Everybody didn't want to take a chance of giving money. They wanted to be at the end of it because they wanted to guarantee that it came up. Well, we couldn't make it come up because nobody wanted to support it. We asked ranchers, we asked the county, we asked the city. Nobody wanted to do it. So until we get on the same page and actually want to put ourselves out there, we're not going to ever make anything happen. Tony Gonzalez would come to the city every year with what Megan just talked about. We could never make it happen. Nobody wants to give you support letters. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult because nobody wants to get involved.
I wanted to touch on another thing Mr. Nixon was talking about. You have a rapidly aging population here. And just because you're on Social Security or whatever, doesn't mean that you can afford an apartment at $500 or $600 a month. That takes half of your paycheck sometimes. So in a population of 9,100 in this county, over 2,000 of that is on Social Security. That's almost a quarter. That's gonna have to be taken into account. You can't, I don't know, it's just like, I don't have all the answers, but I just know that we need more affordable housing, not just for students or workers, but for seniors as well. It's like, speaking as a senior, I just want you to know that.
Yeah, I think we need a diverse solution to our housing problem. We have throughout the entire scale a problem in housing. We just had our board meeting of Alpine Community Projects last night and spent an hour on nursing homes last night. Kirsten Moody, who's our president of our board, who's here virtually, this board has kind of been her brainchild, and she's the leader of everything that drives us in our board. And I joined specifically because I was tired of complaining about things that I wanted, and it was time for me to take a little action. And so we spent some time on nursing homes last night, and what we know is that they are really hard in a small town with a small population. The resources per person and the acreage needed per person is quite the big demand. But Kirsten Moody has been working for years now on a project called Greenhouse, and they have many operating. It's a nursing home like unit, but it simulates a home experience. And so there's not monitors following people all the way around. They're seeing vast improvements in people's mental health, people's physical health, because of the environment and the community that they've created. So our greatest hope would be to bring some sort of a working concept to this area, because we know that population is aging, and we know that people want to stay here. People want to be in their homes or near their homes and near their families. And so I would, if there's any questions about nursing homes or want for it, I would point everybody possibly towards Kirsten Moody. There she is. Kirsten has just been working on this for such a long time and has such great ideas, and she would be the resource for our group, and I think and I hope our community on that.
Did you want to add to that, Kirsten? We can turn.
Hi,
Hi, we can hear you.
thanks, Keith. I'm really glad for the opportunity to talk about this concept with this group, and I won't talk for a long time, Keith. But yes, I mean, obviously we all know that we need a nursing home in Alpine. We had one. Those of y'all, that have been there for a while know that we had one until about 10 years ago. I don't know if it was the greatest nursing home in the world. I think, possibly there were a lot of improvements that could have been made to that one, but at least we had something where family members could visit their family members, every day if they needed to, not like now where they're in Fort Stockton or Crane or Pecos, whatever. And there's this new model of nursing home called the Greenhouse model, and they are all over the country right now. And as Keith said, they are a whole world different in terms of care. And that having they're just briefly, it's 10 to 12 elders in a building, and it's a home-like environment. But more than that, it's the training that goes into the staff and the way the staffing works. Employs a lot more CNAs and employs them to do a whole range of things than just come in and do nursing. And there are big open kitchens where the residents, if they want to, can come in and do stuff in there, and they have one big table where everybody sits as a family, and they each have a fireplace. And anyway, there's a whole lot to that would be pretty exciting to bring. But as Keith said, and as we all know, it's hard to fundraise for all of that. It'll be a long process. But anyway, I'll throw that out there. And then on our website pretty soon, I think in our Alpine Community Projects website, we'll be able to put some documents and links up there so that people can learn more about that concept. And we'll see if we can rally together and figure something out for Alpine.
Thank you, Kirsten. We appreciate it.
I was just going to tie back in with what Keith said for diverse housing options as well. And then when we do the development plan, to have a strategic plan, because when we look at the country club area, the long road that leads out there and everything is an expense to people. So if the middle housing would be important, I think we should look at some point, maybe increasing density, having more density or something like that in certain areas of the town, maybe closer to downtown. But we just need to look at the cost benefit when we actually look at those development plans, because when you have very large homes, they require very large values to provide a tax base in order to support something like that. And when you can have more density and things like that and more people, then you can have people lower cost of income. And I think even when I had moved out here, I didn't find a lot of options as far as like, places to say like that you might find in other areas.
There's a housing initiative in Idaho, of all places. It's called LEAP. And they specialize in low income housing. And they're individual units. They're built out of rail cars. They have carports with 5K of solar panels on them. And they're beautiful. And it's arranged like an apartment complex. Because I like to live by myself. I don't think that, a nursing home would, at this time, is not what I'm looking for, okay? I just like to find a nice place to live. But, I mean, to have an association like that, come and see if it's viable here. Low income projects, for low income residents, housing projects like that. I don't care what it's built out of, as long as it stays together, so it's just my thought.
Well, I absolutely love everyone's input, and I want to stay on track, but I also want to take all of your information because it does all tie together. There is no one direction, first, second, third, it all ties together. And I think it's really important that we continue these discussions. The first two of these meetings was really to provide some feedback, to get where everyone was standing. It's not just our infrastructure, even though that's what ranks the highest, but it's the housing, it's the childcare. I'm pretty sure we could throw education in there. We do want to support. I am sad to hear some of the things that never happened and the partnerships that were never fully developed. But Alpine is changing. No matter how much people look at me when I say that, Alpine is changing. We're thriving. We're making these big differences. And it's hard because we do have the historic aspect. We don't have the data. I know one of the feedback items was to have a map of all of the water leaks in the past 5 years. I would love for them to volunteer. Go with map for people. Love to be able to provide something like that, but we've had turnover. We've had, since I've been employed with the city, 10 utility directors. We have an age gap of knowledge from 30 years of service to 2.5. That's a huge difference when you talk about knowledge. We've gone through different softwares. But for me, when I'm out in the field, because I've been out there, I've gotten to see what they do. I'm not thinking about, I need to fill the work order out so that I can get it turned in first thing Monday morning, even though it's Christmas and I'd rather be at home with my family. We're not always aware of everything unless we get the paperwork. Our staff doesn't always think about the paperwork. They're not the nerdy type like I am. My office is full of paperwork because I want to document everything. If someone asked for that email from 1925 when there was no email, here it is. So it's hard to get that information. They know it's true. But to get all this data, to me, what I'm hearing is, yes, we have infrastructure problems. We know our roads are bad. I personally didn't think we need to spend 50,000 to good and bad. I'm pretty sure we could all walk outside our house and be like, yeah, my road is not good. Yeah. But to have the data. So the first step is we need to actually hire someone. We don't have the internal staffing and knowledge base to do it. The 3 things that are hard to a strategic plan: the money, the staffing, and the leadership. We have a leadership that wants to move forward and make changes. Our staffing doesn't wear one hat. We have employees who do things that I'm pretty sure they never thought in their life they would ever do. Never thought I'd read meters. Never thought I would do it. Never thought I would go pick up dog, poop. We have employees who do so much with what limited resources we have. So yes, we have to live within our means, but at what point do we realize our means have to change? We have to have that hard discussion no one wants to have. Doesn't mean that I'm gonna come before council on May 1st and be like, okay, let's go up to 9 million. We're gonna do all kinds of stuff. No, it's putting this plan together to go before the public, to go before council and say, hey, you know what, we need to fix these. But I want an engineer to tell us and have that confidence that when I applied for a grant, hey, sign, seal, deliver. It's not me and Marcy spending late hours at night and on weekends like, well, I could estimate concrete at $15 a square foot. We're not doing that. She's done it, guys. She's doing it now. We know. So that is step one. That is what it sounds like out of just 2 meetings. We know we have the problem. We all knew when this started what our problems were. It wasn't really a matter of, oh, well, it was no, we knew. But we wanted it to be vocal, transparent, and clear. The city says we have problems. We're not hiding it. I'm not letting you know that, oh yeah, the wastewater treatment plant, we've had some issues. No, we haven't had issues. We have problems. We need to fix them. 2, get the plan together. So that when Chris, you come in and say, hey, we got that award. Where are we at with that project? We're right here. We've done 50% of it. We're on schedule. TCQ is backed off. We have paid fines to TCQ, guys.
Yeah.
That's money that could have been a salary. That's money that could have gone into a new fixture. But no, we're sending it to the state because we can't get our act together. We are being very open. That is the whole purpose of these meetings. Our employees, dear and near to my heart, because I am an employee. I know what it's like. I've worked my way up. It's hard. There are days that I go home and cry. It's like, I don't know how to make the improvements with what little resources we have, because everyone should be making more. Let's be competitive. Let's go out there and put in a structure that if, Sarah comes in and I've got a college education and I've got 40 years experience, I'm not hiring her at $13.50. That we're hiring them at where they should be. And that's what we need to change. I love, no matter if one person was here tonight or 1,000 people were here, the fact that people are showing up, it's different. It's new people and they're providing input is important. At our next meeting, we'll go into some deeper discussion. I wanted to provide highlights because there has been a lot of feedback. A lot of people are worried about the money. I can't worry about the money if I don't know what we're going to do. I can't worry about the $40 million wish list when we don't know what phase 1 is. After tonight, for me, it sounds like we really need to sit down and figure out what our plans are to address. Water. We have no feasibility study on water. We don't even know what assets we have. That's 1. Hire someone, stay on top of them, hold them accountable. Don't settle because we have to, because they're going to sue us, and have them provide us that resource and be able to go to the public and say, hey, Sarah, did you know you've got 4 water lines that run diagonal to your, because we'll know. We won't be out there like, well, it's somewhere in this area. Go ahead, Debbie.
Do you know the last time, or if it's ever been done, the city has done a cost of living analysis, not the county, but the city?
In my lifetime, no. So at least 10 years.
So is that something that we could maybe look into doing? Because that, I think, will really show us what we're missing out on and why people are leaving and why people aren't staying, to do certain things that we need them to be here for.
You mean at a city scale, like all residents? I'm trying to figure out what's right. Not like city workers,
Like,
competitive pay. You mean like
a cost of living
for the
analysis just
entire
for,
city?
for the whole city,
Like,
just
why
how much
does
it costs to live here.
$8 for a bag of chips, but at HEB it would be $3.50.
Yeah, something
Okay.
like that. And it would compare the wages that people are getting to how much it costs to go to the grocery store and something
I
like
think
that.
that's a wonderful idea, Danny, and I think that's something that we can look into. And I don't see why we can't. It may take a little time, staffing. Or
Sure.
is it something that maybe we want to piggyback off of someone else? You're hire out because there are people who, this is what they do for a living.
Yeah, sure.
But even then, working those partnerships, because the county's no different than us. We're in the county, guys. Yeah, we're part of the county as well. But having that conversation, Greg snuck out here, but maybe it's something that they can benefit from too, because they struggle with staffing.
It takes a village, it takes all of us.
Well, and
It-
I would totally think that, I mean, all of the entities that we've been discussing, the college, the ISD, the hospital. they're all in the
Everyone-
Same boat.
Yeah, I think everyone would benefit from it. I feel like the city, like if we did one just for the city, it would be a lot different than the county. But
No, it's
Others-
definitely, but maybe we can piggyback so that,
Sure,
we'll
we
have
could
a city
all-
one, but
yeah.
the county will contribute a little bit of money, so they get a
they get one
bigger
done too,
picture.
yeah.
And then the school district, maybe they contribute, and maybe it's not money, maybe it's, hey, you know what? Darren Nance is great with technology, and he loves numbers, even though he doesn't admit to it. And knowing the people who can help, yes, I think it's a great.
We have resources here that I feel like could assist in that. It may be something we need to kind of bring someone in for, but once we get those numbers, then there's definitely people here that can work with that and.
Once
try to
we get
fix
the
that
data,
for Sure.
the spreadsheet,
Mhm.
I mean, once I get a spreadsheet, I can put numbers where I need to put them. It's getting it developed in all those formulas to get that bottom line number that my brain sometimes is like, nope,
Right.
it's not gonna work.
And I just wanted to kind of add, and I know you kind of touched on it earlier. I'm kind of concerned at the lack of employees that we have to do the things and to fix the problems that we have. And we lose more than there is no one to fix the problems that we have. So how are we gonna fix that? What are we gonna have to do for that? And so I really feel like when we're looking at all this, employees should be first. Like, we have to have people to do the work.
Thank you.
And we have to figure out why we don't have people though also. So we need to look at why that is and how we can fix those problems and really just go from there. Because if we start at, hey, this is the problem, okay, this is how we're going to fix it, but we don't have anyone to fix it. We've now spent all this time. Now we have to go back and figure out how to get the people to do those things.
And this is why this plan is important, because employees go hand in hand with the projects. And you're right, it is concerning. And when I talk to other entities and businesses, even when I go to a restaurant and you wonder like, why are they closed? Well, they didn't have the staff to stay open. A lot of it is very upfront and honest here. Hey, I don't want to go swim with water and sewer at $13.50. So it is my job and the job of council and our citizens to, when we go before and we present this pay scale and we make these improvements, it's making sure we do it right. We've made one adjustment in 2018 where we changed the starting pay. What killed the city was we changed the starting pay, but we didn't take into consideration any of the employees, what they were currently being paid. There was no compression rate. There was no, I'm gonna take the 10 and move them to $13.50. But then you have someone making $13.50 who's been there 3 years, who worked that $13.50 and got nothing.
I feel like that cost of living analysis would help with that, like where the money comes from, I can't say, but I feel like there would be a better understanding of where are we at compared to, cities of our size, or even like the national average, where are we at? And if we're like 60% below the national average, how do we fix that? Because it's something that needs to be addressed.
I love it. Thank you so much.
And of course, if we have people who can do it in-house, community members, that would be the best way to go, volunteers. If there's somebody that can do it inside. And then also Greg had a previous commitment that he had to get to. So that's why he stepped out.
The one thing I was going to say on that cost of living was the meeting, the Alpine Downtown Alliance, there's the professor, I think, up at Sul Ross, and he was talking about, so that might be a perfect.
He's been working with us, yeah.
Beautiful. And then,
there may be classes.
oh, I was just saying, because that's very academic thing.
The college that.
And then the last thing I was gonna say, being now in Alpine for about 5 years, I think there's a ton of great ideas, And I think Alpine at some point does need to come to an acceptance that a lot of these ideas are going to require growth.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's important because sometimes I used to have a beer at Harry's and, you know, people that have been here a while like Alpine the way it was. And I think a lot of these things are going to require economic growth, new people, whether internal or external, people staying here or tourism or something like that.
I've been here 16 years, and when I moved here, there were a lot of businesses on downtown. And I listened to the older folks go, well, we had a JCP, we had all those people gone out of business, okay? So we can't have those people. We can do something about getting growth. I think if you get the city on the right path, that will come along. And another thing I wanted to mention is, as far as housing is concerned, maybe a rent to own program. You can invest your sweat equity into something that you know you're gonna own. You can rent it, and then sometime it's gonna be yours. I think that will encourage people to go out and get on their own and keep up their house. And you don't have to have the ordinance people come around, you know. So, thank you.
Well, I think it's a lot of great input. I really am excited. And I've already got some notes here, some cost of living. I've already did a little research. May not be as hard as we think.
And
got
right,
the
Dr.
direction.
Right, Dr. Francisco Polaris next to that. That
Oh,
was
yeah, I
Darren's
know. He's already
suggestion.
got the email started.
Oh,
I have to keep moving. If I stop, I forget.
multitasking.
There was a program that the city did in the 90s. We're changing Alpine, guys. And it was a lot to do with USD housing. And basically the city started and implemented the housing projects, and then the individual reimbursed the city. So I've got a note here to reach out. Unfortunately, my contact, Mr. Perkins, has retired.
The area person is.
Yeah, so
different person.
So we have people. A lot of what you guys have said too, for me in my mind is, because I had an employee today, just education. There are programs out there to help that people don't know about. And I think we can focus on that to help our residents, budgeting, housing, how to afford, what can you afford? How do you invest to own? Those programs are out there, and your comment, Karen, is what triggered it. We have a lot of work to do. I'm not gonna go home and sleep. We have a lot of work to do because we all want to make Alpine better. We live here. No matter what happens, this is my home. I'm gonna check people online too, see if they have a comment.
I just wanted to say, so the testing center up at Sul Ross, they do TCEQ testing now.
I know
They
it's
do
started-
P-Col testing.
I know.
So everyone in our region now they don't have to go to El Paso. They don't have to go to Houston. They don't have to do all that anymore. So they're in my office. So that's why I know we share an office suite. And so I'm really excited about that she's able to offer that for us here, because that travel expenditure is not there anymore. It's
time.
gone.
Yes, but it's not just it's the time. It's our employees getting up at 6 to be there before 8. And as soon as I got that first email, Danny, I was just like, oh, thank you. I've never been
I mean, I don't they don't have to travel anymore. They don't have to just take families because they're gone all day just traveling. And this like stressful thing, everyone, you know, I'm sure at some point has had to test, and it's you get anxious, and traveling just does not help that. You're out of your, you know, comfort zone, you're out of your environment, and I really think it's very beneficial.
Oh, no, definitely. When it was brought back, I mean, I was relieved. I was excited that Dr. Hernandez and everyone focused on bringing that back.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with the people online to see if you have a comment, anything that you want to add. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, I don't really have anything I want to add, but except that I'll just say again, I've told Megan, you know, privately, but I'm so excited and encouraged and appreciative that she and Marcy and the rest, and you, Catherine, I mean, everybody that's there with this city and the council members that are behind this and pushing it. And it's not just one meeting and then you can check a box and said we had a public meeting, but it is many, many, many meetings. And like really in-depth information. I took a lot of screenshots tonight of some of the things that Megan had up there. And anyway, just really thank you. I think y'all are doing such good work and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you and all you're doing for the community.
Thanks.
I think we've taken a step into the 21st century. I said, I think we're taking a step into the 21st century, finally.
I think that's right.
Well, I'd like to end, I don't know if Caroline wanted to say anything. She was here at the last meeting. I'm glad she's online and visiting with us again. But I want to end, and I, unfortunately Keith has stepped out, but I think this is gonna be my new quote. And this will be my reminder when I come to work. I was tired of complaining about things I wanted, so I joined to start taking action.
That was powerful.
That is why we're here. Every day I get up and I come to work for the city of Alpine. This is my community. I don't do it for anything spectacular. I do it because I want the nursing home. So when I retire here, that there's someone that can take care of me. I enjoy our community. We've grown, we're thriving, we're changing. We have new faces in the community that are coming out. And I want to continue that. And I think that's exciting.
The Sullivan House in Fort Davis was good. We sent a lot of our patients there. I would check into that if the nursing home is a problem. That they took maybe 20 women and you can find out the Sullivans.
I don't think they're open anymore.
No, they're not. But she wanted to do that.
Yes.
And she worked really hard, but there were a lot of government regulations that they had problems with. And then they donated 16. I think for them. And then who was Mr. Chambers was working on it. And it fell through for some reason. Well, we definitely need that. I don't think this is working.
It is. So they
Can you hear me? But
It's never a failure. It's a learning opportunity and how we need to move forward.
Yeah.
Well, if no one else has any comments. There are plenty of cookies and I don't want that to be my dinner. So please take some. And we'll have our next one February 2nd. We're building on. That's next week, guys. I'm telling you, yeah, it is.
Usually goes down.
No, that's okay. Gotta keep it moving. And thank you guys, everyone, for all of the great information.